Welcome to another episode of WTF Cinema.
Our characters realize that they've been in the swamp for a while now and they're in danger of running out of food. Luckily, Chuck decides to go boar hunting with a bow and arrow he keeps in the RV. Because who doesn't keep a throwdown bow and arrow in their car? And we get treated to the most epic hunting scene since... Bonus points to anyone who manages to get that reference. Spooky Chick then decides to try and burn a hole in her hand. I've long since given up trying to understand her character's motives. The movie has made it very clear by this point that it's not really going to explain anything, because that might accidentally lead to character development. By this point in the movie, they've been stuck in the swamp for 4 or 5 days. It's really hard to tell because the movie isn't consistent in its timeline. It doesn't really like to keep track. So you get some day shots and some night shots, then some day for night shots, then some day shots. 4 or 5 days is my guess. The boss has called several times. He's sending out search planes. The main characters, though, don't really seem to care about getting rescued. They don't really want out of the swamp. They're running out of food. They're having to hunt wild boars, but apparently life in the swamp is good. I guess I understand Chuck not wanting to get out of the swamp because he's getting laid like a champ. But what about Spooky Girl? She's getting all these weird, crazy visions of danger and clowns and stuff. Doesn't she want out of the swamp? And what about that politician that just randomly showed up? You're telling me she didn't think to say, hey, where'd you come from? He probably knows the way out. He showed up and then he left. You probably could have followed him out. Also, they got stuck following a detour off the highway. So you're telling me that in 4 to 5 days, no other vehicle took that highway. There were no other vehicles that got detoured onto this side road at all. Now, I don't expect the detour to stay up for 4 or 5 days. But you're telling me nobody uses that road. And you're telling me nobody but the RV got detoured during the horrible storm of the century? No, of course not. But that would ruin us not having a plot. We just want a movie where people sit around in the woods and fornicate, apparently, and get visited by random politicians. And God forbid anything get in the way of our random politicians and spooky visions with bits of boobs shoved in it. Oh, never mind. Apparently Spooky Girl was waiting in the swamp until she and Chuck could get it on. My God, there's a lot of pointless sex in this movie. I feel like I'm watching the Doom Generation again. Except for the weird clown scene. The Doom Generation didn't have clowns in its sex scenes. What is up with her and the clowns? I mean, I understand there are people freaked out by clowns, but if they're really haunting your psyche this much, you need help.
I'll drive you crazy. I'll kill you all. I'll make every nightmare you ever had. I am the worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
While Spooky Girl and Chuck are out getting it on, Cute Girl decides to dance around the RV with a stuffed monkey on her face. As you do. Then her dancing is interrupted by the rednecks from earlier in the film, who apparently spent 4 or 5 days hunting the swamp trying to find her? Are they that desperate for sex? Nobody else will touch them? It's the 60s. It looks like everybody does it at the drop of a hat. Why would you spend 5 days hunting through the woods for this girl who did like kind of a sexy dance tease thing on the highway practically last week? That seems like an odd set of priorities to me. They then proceed to rape and murder her. That makes no sense. If she had gotten their dander up with her sexy tease and they had to teach her a lesson because she's a woman, 4 days, 5 days of being inflamed with passion to hunt this chick down, or did they just get lost in the woods and come across them? Well, no, That seems like it'd be too much of a crazy random happenstance. So clearly they had to be hunting her down. Is she the only rapeable chick in, like, the state? Why would you dedicate that much time and energy to hunting somebody down to rape and murder them? You didn't know her. At least you never showed up in any flashbacks. Are we not going to get an explanation for why this group of hillbillies decided to hunt down, rape, and murder this girl? No, of course not, because we're like 2 minutes away from the end of the film now. That was our climax. We didn't see it coming, it just spontaneously, it was a premature climax that took an hour and a half to get here! We then cut back to the start of the film, where Spooky Girl turns to Cute Girl and says, "He's an Aries, we should definitely go with him, it'll be fun." The end. Did the whole film just unhappen? Did we rewind? Was it a dream sequence? Was it a vision? If it was any of those things, why did Spooky Girl change her mind? We saw it ends in her friend getting raped and killed. Does she want her friend raped and killed? Why did we go back to the start of the film and undo the entire movie to redo it? Wouldn't you want to change that kind of fate? Also, we went back to the beginning of the film! Why did I just watch this? I watched this entire thing, and then at the end you tell me, oh, by the way, none of that happened. By the way, whoops, not real. That's even worse than it was all a dream. I just gave you my time. I gave you my time and attention, and you on it. You said it didn't happen. None of it. I could have watched the first 5 minutes of this movie, and I know everything that happened. Why would you do that? Why does this movie even exist? Who is its audience? It has no plot. It has pointless flashbacks. It's got some occasional boobs. Was that it? Is it because sometimes it shows boobs? Were boobs that rare in the 60s? Were they that hard to find that you could only go and sit through this pile of garbage because you occasionally got to see nipples? I mean, I know they didn't have the internet back then with all the free pornography in the world, but surely there were easier ways of getting to look at boobs than sitting through this atrocity set to celluloid. I don't understand. It didn't make any sense. The entire way through. It just flat out refused to make any sense. It refused to have a plot. It gave us a whole bunch of flashbacks, but it refused to have them add up to anything. It gave us the creepy clown imagery that meant nothing. Spooky Girl had this, I'm a priestess of Apollo, and then it was never brought up or mentioned again. We had the random politician coming. Nothing meant anything. And then just as an extra f*** you at the end, the entire movie didn't even happen. Screw you, movie. Alright. I'm tired of picking on these little obscure films that nobody's ever heard of. It's easy to find bad movies that nobody's ever heard of, because nobody's heard of them. Because they're bad. So next week, we're going mainstream Hollywood summer blockbuster. Oh yes. Because WTF Cinema does not discriminate. See you then.
Thank you for watching WTF Cinema. Until next time, what the f***, man?
I'm imagining that this is what... God! She then gets naked and lays down on a slab in the middle of the swamp.